So I'm hoping that this will feel like an invitation, but it might feel like opinions, 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 opinions on opinions, because I want to talk about opinions today. So here's my opinion on opinions. Actually, I have been thinking about opinions a lot lately, and that's not new for me. Actually, in 2015, I made this a daily practice for 2 years. And I had a reason to do that. I was suffering. I was creating suffering for myself and probably for others. And so I just kind of looked at this every day. And I've done this before with a couple topics. And this is my invitation. One of my main points today is to something that you want to work on, just stay with it for a long time, even if it's just a little bit and lightly to check in, because I've learned so much by doing that. I've done that now with kind of 3 topics. And it just enriches things. And I think actually it helps me to have enough repetition to actually make something stick. They say when you learn a sport, you have to do like 10,000 repetitions. And I'm sure you have to do even more than that to be really refined. So just to change our mind, we do need to practice things. Okay, so I was suffering and I wanted to look at opinions. And back then, mostly I think I was kind of just looking at kind of in a smaller way, like, yeah, was this helpful? Was it not helpful? When is it needed and when isn't it? Because I would get through a day and I'd realize, you actually have to have opinions about some things. So then it's like, when are they useful and when aren't they? And so I've been thinking about this lately just because it's been in my orbit. And um, and how we work with our mind when we have opinions or other people do, all this and that. And so lately I've been thinking a lot about what is it, like just trying to refine it a little bit more, like the ones that seem to be useful are ones that I don't have any afflictions associated with. And in general, I find that it's helpful, like if you think about it, if you're working collaboratively on something and you want to have a lot of good ideas, if you're really attached to your views or your ideas, which we can have attachment for ideas, you actually probably aren't going to get the best idea for something. So the goal really when we go into collaborative things is not to have our way, but to have the best solution. And actually it's kind of good to know that going in, because you might not think that walking into a room. I certainly didn't always think about that. What else? Well, there's times where it can be very helpful, but I think if I look at my mind, those are the times where I have more flexibility there. Yeah, and it seems maybe more like kind of narrow. Like there's not a lot of else going on. Like I'm not like ticked off at somebody. I'm not thinking I'm like full of myself and what I have to say is so important. Those are the things that aren't there. So one thing about that I find to be that I've been thinking about most recently, what a big disadvantage is, which I didn't think about before, was how much when you're opinionated, because that usually, now you're in the realm of judgmental maybe, or you're kind of hedging that direction often, or quite firm in your opinion, and you might not be listening to others and this and that kind of opinion. Do you have equanimity in your mind then? Or even can you have equanimity in your mind then? I kind of found recently that I couldn't. And so because that's something I value, it's like, okay, I need to kind of open up a little bit here so I can get back to what's important. So yeah, I think one of the things that I would say about this is if we can look at these topics, I don't know, I'll say it this way. years ago, I read a footnote in a book by Biko Analio about the problems that Westerners have with their Dharma practice, why they don't generate realizations. It was very short, but I always remembered it. And it was because we have kind of like our stories and our dramas and our details. And actually, we don't back up and get enough distance from things to kind of look at what is the mental state. And for myself, I learned this when I learned about doubt. I remember you calling me the queen of doubt many years ago. I was just like always doubting this and this and doubting that. And at that point in time, I can remember I'd have like, I think I figured out, oh, like 250 times I do this, I get nowhere. And maybe once in a blue moon, it yields something. And after going through this a few thousand times, I finally recognized what doubt was. That was my first problem. And then realizing it was a complete dead end. Like that mental state alone, it didn't matter what the content was. It was just that mental state alone, whatever I poured into it was going to be like a blender and a big mess. So I kind of feel this way sometimes when our mind gets to a certain way with where we aren't able to grow or able to, understand things, is because we're too much in the story, too much in the details, and we actually haven't stepped back and see the bigger picture of what our minds are doing. So that's my invitation, is trying to take a wider perspective. And we know, like with some things, like when we're angry, our mind really narrows. And then when you're feeling much more spacious, you have a lot more grace for everything. So there's this kind of propensity of the mind to kind of be able to be different ways, like what Jennifer was saying this morning, make your mind an ocean, as was it Lama Yeshe or Lama Zopa, one of the two. So yeah, that's my invitation, is to pick a topic, mine was opinions, and stay with it and look at it from small ways and large ways and over time and see what you learn.